Hello and welcome to the transmission. This is the review for the Diriyah ePrix second round race and qualifying. Now before the qualifying, you had Mortara careening into the wall after a practice start at the end of FP3 because of a brake pedal malfunction or something like that. And that meant that none of the Mercedes-powered cars were allowed to take part in qualifying while the FIA decided and had a look at the power units to see whether they were safe. Because obviously, having them not have any brakes is kind of a bad thing, and you don't want that when in a car on a street circuit with 250 kilowatts of power. But firstly, Rast and Evans didn't make it. They set their 200 kilowatt lap and then missed the timing, so they never actually got to set a proper full place lap in their group qualifying. Roland did a good lap, but then overshadowed by Oliver Turvey blasting to P1 from Group 2. He ended up second overall after Robin Freins in group qualifying. Super fast. Both Neos got through, and both Dragons as well all got through to Superpole. These were the cars that were right at the back of the pack last year. I've no idea how they managed it. It was brilliant. The Neo looked like a real handful anyway for Oliver Turvey. If you look at his onboards, it was so impressive to see. And especially given that a lot of the really good guys that you normally think of when you see Formula E, like Degrassi and Buemi, and, well, those two are the main ones, they didn't qualify anywhere near the front. They were far off the pace. And then you had the Neos and the Dragons up front, and Robin Freins and Sam Bird also at the front in group qualifying. It was very impressive from the newbies as well. People like Jake Dennis and Nick Cassidy did very well. A lot better than the rookies from last year, I have to say. They were quite off the pace in comparison. And Robin Freins got an incredible pole position from that as well. It was great to see. It was definitely good to see. But right on with the race, as I mentioned, you had the current championship leaders. They're starting right up at the back. The start was kind of not too chaotic, which is always nice to see, because if you're going to have chaos, might as well have it a bit later. And we kind of did. Oh boy, did we, but let's get back to that one after a bit. So Sam Bird, went from 4th up to 2nd real quickly. And Antonio Felix da Costa, and in fact both of the Titas were looking pretty fighty, you know. They seem to be working well together as a team. And I say that. They did really look like a slick operation. It comes up later, even more so. But they always manage it to some extent and then completely obliterate it. But sadly for Alex Lynn, who did have a pretty good qualifying, he kind of got shuffled back quite far at the start, and he would end up fighting at the back of the race along with most of the other front runners like Nick de Vries and Stoffel van Dorn. And they were all right at the back, and they didn't really make up because they were in a sort of like a trolley train, but in Formula E. It was quite interesting to see, but you'd think that, you know, someone like the commentators were saying, oh, these guys are so good, how come they're not recovering? But then also, everyone in the field has been really showing their stuff. There's not anyone in this field of Formula E drivers that you can really say is behind the pace, is off the pace. Because like last year, I don't want to disparage any drivers, obviously, but there were some drivers last year who were rookies or not rookies, but they didn't do that well. Ma Ching-ha was generally a bit off the pace, even off the pace of Ollie Turvey, his Neo teammate, and you had like Nico Müller as well, although he's really gone up since then. He's gotten a lot better, but at the start you notice, as opposed to last race, in round 1, where De Vries just goes right off, Freins wasn't extending from Bird, and like Bird was not just sticking behind, but catching him. And this is a battle for the ages, because Freins and Bird used to be teammates at Virgin. They were on behind the visor a lot, doing the banter. Oh, it was great. But Freins just wasn't extending. And it made you question, how long is Robin Freins going to be able to stay in front? And oh boy, that becomes big part later. But you see the Dragons and the Neos just slipping down the order, not quite managing to stay in the sort of top 3. Sergio Sete Camara was doing an absolutely stellar job. I did not expect that. He seemed, from last year, because he started during the Berlin ePrixes that were last year. He started, he looked pretty fast, but a bit accident prone, and he still seems like that, because he's had a few accidents. But he did a really good job this race. Really well done. Now, another key talking point is Sebastian Buemi. Now, it's safe to say that Buemi was one of, if not the best Formula E driver back in Gen 1. But Gen 2, it's not gone so well for him. He's not had a good time with that. He's seemed to be struggling. He's not quite racking up the wins that he used to. And you could see that in him versus Nick Cassidy, who's a rookie. And Nick Cassidy kind of really looked like he was fighting him. And that is not what you'd expect to see from someone of the caliber of Buemi. I mean, he's still doing well. He just isn't as dominant as he was back then. Like, I mean, the only reason he didn't win more championships back then was because of bad luck, or the fact that he missed a couple of the races. I mean, he almost missed out on the second season because Degrassi took him out at the end. But that's a whole nother topic. So I mentioned the Dragons. I was getting concerned about them when I was watching it. I was really getting concerned because they were using way more electricity, way more energy than everyone else. It looked like they were over-consuming. It turned out alright in the end for them, but I was a little concerned. Now, you don't normally get attack mode right at the start, but a little bit in, and the strategy started to come up with attack mode, and I really like it. It's really an interesting concept, attack mode, because you lose time activating it, but you gain time overall if you're in clear air, because you can go faster on the straights due to the more energy. But of course you use more energy. It's a multifaceted bit of strategy which is really interesting. And what you saw was an undercut from Vern and Frines. And again, you see the slight tensions between the cheetah cars, and also, but Frines and Bird. Frines managing to stay ahead because of the undercut. And when Bird took the attack mode, he lost out to Sete Camera, which probably cost him a little bit of time, but it didn't matter in the end. But it was something to make a note of, because he lost a bit of time to that, and it shows how the attack mode is very strategic, more than you might expect. Now, the way that cheetahs, and they've been doing this a lot, not just in the this ePrix, but in the last one, and also during portions of last year, they've seemed like a real slick operation. They would bunch up together. You have one in front, one in behind, doesn't really matter which one. And they would both help each other, let each other past, take attack modes, slip behind, and then immediately go back past. And the other one would use the slipstream to keep up, even when the one in front had attack mode on. And then he would use attack mode. And they'd both use this strategy to get past every car in front of them, and they would climb the ranks incredibly quickly. But, and it's quite a big but, because this is quite a big thing, they'd seem like a very well-oiled machine right up until they've passed everyone they can, and it's time for them to race each other, at which point it's bad. It's bad times. They made a bit of contact. They were having a great battle, side by side, and then I think it was Da Costa sort of slightly shoved Vern almost into a wall. It wasn't quite into a wall, but it was pretty close. They didn't look like they were the biggest fans of each other after that. They were a little peeved after the race. They said they'd sort it out internally, and I imagine that involved a little bit of being not super happy with each other. I hope this doesn't affect their working relationship in future, because it wasn't that big although I say it wasn't that big a deal, but Jean-Eric Verne lost a lot of time overall, ended up 12th, whereas Da Costa was 3rd. But, talking about smashing people into a wall, Pascal Wehrlein. Ooh, that was a real dirty maneuver. So, you had Jake Dennis going up the inside into the chicane. Pascal Wehrlein on the outside. That means he has the inside on the next corner, the switchback, because it is a chicane. But Wehrlein just sort of moves him towards the wall, and then just sort of keeps going, and Jake Dennis just gets grinded alongside the wall, like in Burnout 3. It just smashed up alongside the wall and just left there. And I mean, Wehrlein got a penalty for it, but that is dirty driving. Dirty driving. That was not ideal. Ooh. He got a penalty, but he still ended up 10th after all that. So I mean, he definitely had a good race. It's just marred by his awful aggression on Jake Dennis. This poor innocent boy who's just been rubbed up against a wall and taken out. That was sad. But back to the lead. Bird tried an overtake on Frines, and then failed and then tried again and succeeded, and then Trines went back. Oh, it was such a great battle. They even remarked after the race that it was a really fun battle for them, and this is what we want to see. This is the stuff. This is lovely. This is excellent. But then, after this, we had a minor incident. And by minor, I mean major, because it was really big. So, and it was a weird one. It was multiple layers. And, so you had, in this incident, you had Buemi, Günther, Evans, and Lynn all involved, and also Blomqvist, which was a shame because Blomqvist was, he was doing well. So what happened was Günther was defending from Buemi in quite an aggressive manner. He'd like, and this is something that I want to talk about more, but he was right up against the wall, squeezing him, and he locked up and went into the back of Blomqvist, who was just ahead taking the corner normally, putting him into a spin, which he did recover from, but he ended up last. But that put Günther out, and that put Buemi out as well. But just after that, and the others were still, on the track, not even a yellow flag had been caught, because this was merely seconds after. Mitch Evans is defending from Alex Lynn, and again squeezes him up against the wall, but this time it doesn't go so well, because Alex Lynn's front wing catches the rear right tyre of Mitch Evans, and it goes up, is the weirdest way to say it. The wing catches it and gets pulled upwards along with the tyre, and because the Formula E car is so big and flat on the floor, it's got a lot of very square floor. If you look at it from above, it's very, very square, like how the F1 cars were last year. His car keeps going up because it's a bit like the Le Mans flip. It goes up, and the car lands on its roof and keeps going backwards straight into the wall, same wall where Mortara crashed earlier in practice even. And so the car has been rubbing on the roof for the entire corner and all of the runoff. It does a backflip and then rubs along the roof. And Mitch Evans presumably had enough damage to stop as well. He stops and drives up to Alex Lynn's upside down wreck. He clearly looks shaken, and I don't blame him, because that accident looked horrible. They didn't even show it on TV at all. Like, I was watching the whole BBC broadcast, and they didn't show any of that accident. They showed the one with Günther, Blomqvist, and Buemi, but they did not show the Evans-Lynn one. And I don't know whether that's because they thought it might have been really serious, or because the directors were being a bit silly. But I imagine it's the former, and that makes sense because of some tragedies that have befallen us in the past. 2019. It was not ideal. So Evans ran up to him and wanted to make sure he was okay. And yeah, it was bad. The safety car was called, and the race ended under the same safety car. because there were only like 3 minutes left. Obviously, it would have been nice to see a last lap battle, but people were more concerned about the safety of Alex Lynn. Now, he did go to hospital. He was taken out, went to hospital, but he was okay. And that, I think we can all say is we can all agree is a great thing. Very glad that he was okay after that, because that seemed pretty bad. That seemed pretty bad. So, at the end, that meant, since it happened under the safety car, and that meant Sam Bird, who was leading at the time, won the race. I don't know whether Freinz could have gotten past him. There was some strategy with attack modes, which could have led to an overtake from Freinz, but I guess we'll never know. But Bird won, Freinz came second, and Da Costa came third. Sergio Sette Camara came fourth for Dragon. Nico Muller came fifth for Dragon. Incredible results for them. Ollie Turvey, what a talent, came sixth for Neo 333. Again, brilliant. Roland seventh from 13th. Again, very good. Lucas Di Grassi, 8th from 15th on the grid. That's really good. Lucas Di Grassi, once again, making some great recoveries, but it is kind of marred by the fact that he's not qualifying well at all. And he needs to, if he was going to even do a championship challenge, he needs to qualify better as well. Nick de Vries, last to 9th. While, yes, helped by the fact that everyone crashed in front of him, last to 9th is pretty good. And fastest lap as well. Nice. Pascal Wehrlein 10th, even with a big penalty. Andre Lotter 11th. I say last. I see 20th on the grid thing. And I think that's last because I've been watching a lot of Formula 1. But no, there's 24 grid slots. So who wasn't last? He was nearly last. So ignore me. Nick de Vries not last to 9th, 20th to 9th. Andre Lotterer was last and he finished 11th. And then you had Verne and Van Dorn, who had a penalty. I'm not quite sure what the penalty was for, but he served it right at the start of the race. So he didn't really stand a chance. Nick Cassidy had a good race and then lost out towards the end. Alex Sims, my main man, the man I'd support, wasn't quite there this time. Very sad. Doesn't seem like the Mahindra really has that much pace in it. Really, it doesn't quite seem that way. Norman Nato, 16th for Venturi. He started almost last, so I guess it's to be expected. Rene Rast, stuck in the big Trilly train. Tom Blomqvist, taken out by Günther, which didn't go so well. And those were all 18 of the finishers. Did not finish was Sebastian Buemi, Max Günther, who again kind of ends up in the situation where he's either really fast and wins, or he gets nothing. And he's still doing that this season. He did that last season. I hope he gets a bit better. And a bit more consistency would be nice. Mitch Evans, also out. Alex Lynn, again, very unlucky for him because he's had 2 pretty good races. And he was out in both of them. This time, first time round, in the first race, it was him aggressively defending. And the other one, it was Mitch Evans aggressively defending. And Jake Dennis also out, taken out by Buemi. Oh no, not Buemi, Wehrlein even. Sorry about that. Mortara didn't take part because he was still recovering from his free practice crash. Now, speaking of Alex Lynn and Jake Dennis and Mitch Evans and Max Günther, there is this epidemic of... I shouldn't say that. There is this trend of the drivers defending way too hard into corners. And you see this a little bit with the Gen 1 cars. I mean, you saw it with Verne versus Lotterer, for example, where he went straight into the back of him. But you see this so much in Gen 2, where the driver in front squeezes him up against the wall, and that's kind of it. They touch. And you see that so much these days. That was how Lynn and who was the other one? Lynn and Bird, was it? I can't remember. Yeah, I think it was Lynn and Bird. That's how they went out in the first race, because Lynn squeezed the other driver and then inadvertently pit maneuvered himself on the corner. That's how Max Günther locked up and hit Blomqvist by squeezing Buemi towards the wall. That's how Evans ended up catapulting Lynn into the sky. It's happening so much. And this isn't just a this season thing. This has happened ever since Gen 2 came out, because these cars... No, this is just a theory, but I think it's because these cars are so strong. They can take a lot of hits, and the drivers have a lot of confidence in them. And so if you're going to not let someone pass, you might as well give them a bit of a rub, a bit of a bump against the wall. And the cars have a pretty thick, chunky rear end. So I guess that's just a consequence of the way the cars are designed. They're so strong that people just abuse that. They're so... You don't see this in Formula 1. Actually, that's not true. You see this in Formula 1, but there's two differences. The side of the track is normally grass, so it doesn't matter if someone pushes the other guy off the track when defending. Or it does a bit, but it matters less. It's not as big of a deal. And in Formula E, it's just walls. It's just straight walls. And secondly, Formula 1 cars are really brittle. Tiniest contact and the front wing just explodes and showers the track with carbon, and you lose 15 seconds per lap in downforce. Whereas these are like... I don't want to say they look kind of plasticky, the bodies, but they do. They look kind of plasticky, the Formula E bodies. And it's just like clonk, and the bit comes off, gets ripped off of the Formula E car, and it just carries on going fine. Like, it reminds me last year, where Pascal Wehrlein had a bit sticking out of the side of his car last year at Diriyah in the second race. And he would just... And Pascal Wehrlein just sort of hit his car against the wall to try and jank this little bit of debris off his car. You would never see that in anything else other than maybe touring cars, but that's just an entirely different kettle of fish. These guys are like touring car drivers in Formula E. I don't know what to think about that, but I do enjoy it. Yeah, sorry about that little rant, but I feel like that's just something that happens a lot in a Formula E, and should be, with the Gen 3 cars, hopefully remedied. Hopefully they won't make them so strong. Because, I mean, obviously a little bit of rubbing is fine, but when they're just putting each other in walls like this, it's not okay. It's not okay, and the accident with Lynn is hopefully good enough to wake them up to that fact. Now, something I'd like to highlight is Robin Fried's. His radio messages are always amazing, because he always seems so empathetic. Like, he's so sad when other people have accidents. He's like, my gosh. Like, in season 5, when Lotra put Sims in the wall in China, I think it was, and Robin Franks was behind them, and he was just like, he didn't stand a chance. He put him straight on the wall. And Sims, the poor guy, didn't stand a chance. I don't know if that's just because I like Sims or I like Friends a lot, but it's just like, it's nice that Friends is such a nice guy. And he's a fast guy. I mean, he came P2, got pole position as well. Really good. And yeah, that's just I just like him. How long have I actually been recording for? 30 minutes! Oh jeez. That was the transmission. I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Thanks for watching to the show. Goodbye.